You're very welcome to another episode of the Scaling Your Business podcast. For this episode, we're going down to Cork to be joined by Wendy Oke, the founder of TeachCloud. Wendy, you're very welcome to the show.
Thanks, Rian.
Yeah, tough to have you. Look, typical fashion of this podcast is we focus on three primary areas: early influences, challenges, and pivotal moments. You've got a really cool story, so let's start with early influences. You grew up in Cork. Any favorite or standout memories of your time growing up in Cork?
So actually, my formative years were in like Paris, London, and then Nigeria.
Wow.
But I spent I spent more years in Nigeria, and I moved to Ireland then when I was about 6. So I would say like early influences would have been definitely my mom and then her grandfather. So like I tell the story all the time, but it's something that I think about a lot. My grandfather went from a makeshift hut to the Supreme Court judge. He literally grew up in a hut with no shoes. And his mom always believed in the power of a quality early education and just an education in general, being able to break the cycle of poverty. So she worked really hard basically to put him through school, and he would help her out as well after school. But education really just catapulted him to new heights. And so when I went into college to study early childhood education, it wasn't actually my first choice. I wanted to be a doctor, but then my mom was diagnosed with cancer in I think fifth, kind of sixth year. So that really derailed me. And kind of because of my grandfather's story, I just saw early years education. I was like, that could potentially be interesting. So I put it down on the CAO, got into CIT, and it kind of went from there. But an early influence definitely would have been like my mom and specifically my grandfather's story.
What's your grandfather's name?
Oh, God. Justice Anyagolu.
Well, shout out to Justice. Definitely had a huge impact on you. I've heard the story of going from the hut to Supreme Court. That's absolutely exceptional. I love nothing more than a story of someone who worked their ass off to get to where they are, and that's a true staple of that story. You definitely have a Cork accent. I know that you said you spent some of your formative years in Nigeria, London, Paris, but you can hear your Cork accent come through. If anyone hasn't, because this is kind of an international audience, US, UK, and Ireland, with the top 3 locations. Anyone has never been to Cork, where, if they had an afternoon to visit, where would you recommend they should go to?
Oh, definitely West Cork anyway. Just
Okay.
anything in West Cork, I feel like is beautiful. And I found a really nice spot in Little Island. I feel like no one knows it exists because I put up a picture of me in like this spot in Little Island. I don't even know what it's called. And everyone was like, oh my God, did you travel during COVID? And I was like, no, I'm in Cork. Like everyone thought I was like in Spain or something. It's just absolutely beautiful. So it's somewhere in Little Island. It's just a really nice spot. And then just anywhere in West Cork.
Nice. Before we get into business and all those good things, what's one thing you like to do outside of work?
One thing I like to do outside of work, it's probably kind of boring, but I like to exercise. I really like swimming. And obviously with COVID, like pools have been closed, but like they're reopened now, actually, thank God. So I love swimming because I just feel like I'm really peaceful during that time. And I don't have to think about a lot of stuff, except there's like a load of kids in the pool and they're like screaming and shouting. But usually it's peaceful.
Nice. Jumping into business, your business is TeachCloud. You mentioned that part of it was probably influenced by your grandfather. How important do you believe the early years of education are in a child's future?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a great question. We've obviously talked about it from a personal point of view. I've seen what it can do in a child's life, but from an academic standpoint, there's a load of benefits for early years education. So specifically for quality early years education. So we all know that one teacher that we had that like we absolutely hated. Maybe they were just like really mean to us, or they just didn't really care that much about us. And when you think about early years, you think about practitioners or teachers that are warm, that are responsive to the child's needs. And when you're a child growing up with that secure attachment, so you know that you have one adult that you can rely on, which we know a lot of children don't have within the home. So when children go into preschool, they know that, they can meet their friends, they learn to socialize, they learn to emotionally regulate. They learn how to just behave appropriately depending on the cultural norms of where they're from. And preschool teaches you all of this. And you probably can't even remember going to preschool or what your early years were like. But obviously that's why they're called the formative years, because they really can determine and define how you come out as an adult. But specifically to quote research, I mean, there's been loads of research, but one in particular was a longitudinal study, and it's a curriculum called HighScope. Parents, if you're listening, you'll probably know what HighScope is, or Montessori. So HighScope, they did like a really long research study, and they found that children who attend these quality preschool services, so again, preschools where they're getting these warm, responsive relationships, where they're able to play, where they're able to socialize, where they're able to have their needs and their beliefs heard. Children that attend these quality preschool services are less likely to be incarcerated. They're more likely to own their own homes as adults. They're more likely to graduate college than their peers who did not attend quality preschool services, or in general did not receive those loving, caring relationships and interactions as children.
Fascinating, because I recently released a podcast, 11 lessons I've learned from my first 60 episodes. And the number one on that list was the impact of teachers. I've recorded probably 57 out of those 60 podcasts, first 60 were interviews. And when I ask people who had the biggest impact on the growing up, I'd say about 45 of the 57 can recall with a smile, and they talk about it forever, a teacher or teachers that had a big impact. And it's a great talking point to get them to talk for 2 or 3 minutes. So it's evidence to see that teachers have a massive impact on children. And some of the people I'm talking to are in their 60s, and they can recall a teacher from when they were 7 or 8 years old, which is phenomenal, because I can't remember what I had for dinner 2 weeks ago or even a week ago. You spent some time working as a development worker, tutor, and lecturer. Any lessons learned from those roles that you leverage in your current business?
That's a really great question. I'd have to think about that one. I think specifically in the lecturing, I was lecturing in CIT, now MTU, and I also did some lecturing on the QQI level 5 and level 6 childcare. So really what I just learned from that was that if you want to have, really I learned more about interacting with people, to be honest, because I was a teacher myself, and I just wanted to give them as much help as possible. So when I was working with the QQI level 5 in childcare, I was working with older or mature students. And so, yeah, I just really learned that it's less about the topic or what you're discussing, and really how you relate to them as just human beings. And like, you'll see that in any profession you're in. Like if you're talking to someone and they can almost hear the smile on the phone, or you're kind of asking, how did your day go? How are you getting on? They're more likely to kind of have a better response and just be like, hi, how are you? What you want? Leave me alone. Do you know, that kind of way. So if you want anything in life, just try and be like personable and actually take an interest in the person's life that you're talking to.
Agree more. I'm going to read out a quote that I found on you, and it says, while doing a PhD in early education, I found that early childhood teachers were overwhelmed with safety and education regulations while trying to desperately to meet the needs of children and their parents. They were spending more time ticking boxes and less time motivating children to reach their full potential. Then TeachCloud was born. For those who are not familiar with TeachCloud, can you take 30 seconds to tell us what it is that you do?
Yeah. So TeachCloud helps preschool teachers and owners manage paperwork, compliance with regulations, training of their staff, and also communication with parents. So what that really means is that we have benefits and features such as tracking children's attendance, cleaning sheets, risk assessments, instant messaging with parents, or even just enabling the parents to see what their child is doing in the preschool. So like their activities by images and videos, or being able to enroll the child digitally. And it's worked out really well, obviously with COVID, that parents are able to do all of this online without having to come into the preschool to fill out a lot of paperwork or take work home. They're able to just do all of this through TeachCloud.
You've got a real passion for this. It's easy to see. For anyone who might not fully believe us yet, even though we referenced your grandfather's story, your final year dissertation was titled "The Components Which Determine Quality in Early Childhood Education and Care," and you received the highest mark in your year. So the debate about whether you've got passion or not is evidence. Where does that passion come from? Is there a standout teacher to you in your mind from your early years? It has to be more than just your grandfather.
Yeah, so I would say there's probably two standout teachers. One was in my early years, and then the other made me like love education again. So the first one was a guy called James. I have no idea if he'd even remember me. I just think he was just like a really nice teacher and just was like nice to everyone. But he would have taught me in fifth class actually in primary school, and we moved to Ireland, like I said, when we were 6. So this was like we had only been in Ireland really a few years, and I didn't really have that many friends, and I'd had a little bit of a tough time in primary school, and to be honest, I had a tough time in secondary school too. But James was always really nice. So that's how I can describe him. And you could tell that he actually cared about his students, and like he'd always want to make sure you were okay, like personally, but then also like academically, he was a great teacher. So he made me feel comfortable. We were kind of new in Ireland still, and so it was just nice to have like an adult that, obviously excluding like my mom, an adult that like, cared about you. And then going on from that, like I said, I had a really hard time in secondary school, didn't do well in my leaving cert at all. So if you're watching this and maybe you're doing your leaving cert or you have a child that's doing it, it's really, I mean, obviously try and do well, but it's not the be all and end all. I did really
Yeah,
badly,
agreed.
and I still, what I mean? I'm okay. But yeah, so then the second teacher, she was a lecturer actually in MTU. Her name is Dr. Judith Butler, and she was my PhD supervisor. And she is probably like, bar God and like my mom, she's like the reason that I started TeachCloud. She's just,
Wow.
she reminds me of like if you thought of like the best human ever, like that's her. Like she's like so lovely, she's so caring, but she's also like really intelligent. So not only will she push you to be like academically better, but she'll actually push you to be a better person. And that's really what I think teachers are. It's like the academics is really important, but also like the interpersonal skills. As we know, like working in any job, whether you're an entrepreneur, you own your own business, or you work for someone else, you need to be able to relate to people.
That's phenomenal. I hope Judy knows that you feel that way. If not, she would be thrilled to hear that. You've won multiple awards. You referenced the Leaving Cert. I think it started today. I didn't do too well myself either, and I'm okay at the moment. So there's two people now telling you that. But you've won multiple awards. Going to read some of them. Ireland's 30 under 30, Ireland's Best Young Entrepreneur, Best Startup in Munster Region 2019, Best Business Plan Award at the New Frontiers, Best Student of the Year 2 years in a row, 2014 and 2015. That's a lot. There's more. I'll stop there though. What would you say to anyone who is considering putting themselves forward for an award? Any benefits you've seen as a result of the award?
Yeah, so I'll answer the first question. If you're considering it, just do it. A lot of those awards, like, going into New Frontiers or even the local enterprise IBYE, and just awards in general, usually the application form is like super quick. So like just read the questions, put down the answers, and forget about it. But if it's something that's going to take you a longer time, then yeah, obviously think about it a bit more. And I would just say, just go for it. The benefits of those awards that you get to, even if you don't win, or you don't get anything from it, with regards to like money or financial help or mentoring, you get to meet other entrepreneurs, and other entrepreneurs will seriously inspire you. You'll get to see what they're doing and that they have very similar challenges to you. So the peer-to-peer learning and a lot of those programs, specifically things like New Frontiers, which is like an accelerator program by EI, you'll get to meet a lot of different people, mentors, financial advisors, but other entrepreneurs that are going in the same journey as you are, and you'll still be talking to them 5 years later, even if you don't end up starting your own business. Like, there's so many lessons to be learned. So if you're thinking about starting a business, or just in general just applying for those kind of awards, just go for it.
You've got your shit together, if that's safe to say. March 2020, you said that attracting talent was a big challenge. I don't know whether that was a challenge, a comment you made when talking to someone, or a challenge you were facing at the time. But especially with big tech prevalent both in Cork, I'm on the border of Meath and Dublin, a big problem here as well. To compete against them, how do you do that? How do you compete against big tech when trying to attract talent to your organization?
I actually think when I said that, just to start off with, part of the problem was definitely myself and my inexperience in actually hiring the right candidate. So from those learnings, I really learned that regardless of if you're even thinking about, competing with like the likes of Apple now, for example, I was really focusing on their like sales talent. Developer talent, I found fairly straightforward to find, and I have really good relationships with our in-house, developers and CTO. But specifically with sales and marketing, I found that incredibly difficult. And for me, it was less about competing competing with the the bigger companies, and it was more about understanding what I needed as a business and who I am as a worker. So some entrepreneurs are laid back. If you don't meet a deadline, they'd be like, look, it's grand, they'll give you an extra day. And then other entrepreneurs are like, if I say, this is the deadline, and I feel like that's most of us entrepreneurs, then this is the deadline. So like, if you know yourself and you have that self-awareness, then it's very easy to hire the right person, and also someone that could fill in those gaps. So if you're looking for a co-founder, for example, then you need to hire someone who will actually fill in the weaknesses that you have within yourself. But that really all starts with self-awareness. And then obviously when you're putting up the job spec, again, self-awareness comes into it, because what are you looking for? And if you are the person applying, why would you want to work for TeachCloud? Like, what can you offer them? For us, it's really like a really nice small team. It's a team that actually cares about you, so like, I had just one of my developers, and he just wrote to me today. He said, look, I have an appointment tomorrow, is it okay if I take it? They only just gave it to me today. And I'm like, of course. And he's always like, in other companies you couldn't do that, do you know what I mean? Or you're kind of just a number. And also that in something like a startup, there's a way you can grow with the company. So you're not just kind of stuck in one position. You're going to be doing lots of different things. But again, I really had to step back and think, like, what is good about TeachCloud? Why would somebody want to work here? And what am I actually looking for? What are we missing for this role? So for me, it started with self-awareness and less to do with kind of like competing with other organizations.
Solid answer. What's a commonly held belief about your industry that you disagree with?
So with regards to the early childhood industry, can I say two? Because
Yeah.
there's like two I feel like that are like competing. So the first one is that early childhood teachers, all they do is play all day, and that they don't actually educate and care for children. So a lot of people believe that, like, when I say those benefits that I first mentioned, they're so shocked. They're like, wait, just going to a quality preschool in your formative years can have all these benefits, and they just can't wrap their head around it. Because a lot of people don't realize that those formative years are, one, incredibly important, and that actually your preschool education plays a huge role, and just your early experiences. So that would be the first thing, is that early child educators are not just like kind of babysitters. They're not just like sitting around minding children. They're actually educating and caring for if they're doing it right, if you're going to a quality preschool. And then the other belief is that if you're in early years education as an entrepreneur, you can't make money. So a lot of times that I had to pitch, I was pitching to, maybe men that were like above 50, and they just did not understand. They were like, preschool? What do you mean? Like, don't kids just like sit around all day? Like, why do they have to be in preschool? So it was kind of educating them that this is actually a viable business, and it's something that's really needed, and that preschool owners will pay for a solution that helps them manage their business better.
Absolutely. What's your favorite part of leading your business?
Do you know what? I like, when I first started this, I was like so afraid. And to be honest, I'm still kind of afraid, because it's hard leading a business, in my opinion, as a woman. I'm the minority in Ireland as well. And I'm also the minority with regards to like entrepreneurs in general. So all of that can be difficult. But to be honest, for me, it's actually having everything on your shoulders. So when you're running a business, like, you can't blame anyone else, even if it's somebody else's fault. It will always be your fault. You're the face of the business, you're the owner. So it's taking on that responsibility. But that's also what I like. I like that I'm in charge of my future. I like that I've created something that I can be incredibly proud of, and that nobody else can take that from me. Whether it fails or it succeeds, we've made an impact in thousands of parents' lives that use our software every day, and also teachers and preschool owners. So it's been an amazing journey so far.
Shocks me that you feel that way sometimes, because to me, I've had limited dealings with you, but you've always come across as very professional. Some people will cancel or postpone podcasts and won't even say it. You got in contact and we're like, hey, can we do it? If we can't, I'm still willing to do it right now. You come across quite confident and very well spoken. But I've seen you. You've mentioned there that you're in the minority of I know you're ambassador for National Women's Enterprise Day, and you've said that you sometimes fear is being seen as arrogant. That shocked me, because you do seem as incredibly confident, very well spoken. You've been surrounded or brought up by you've mentioned your mother and your grandfather. You've got some really good early influences. So I was taken aback when I read that. I don't know, was a document titled "We Fear Being Seen as Arrogant," but that kind of took me aback. So it's maybe that will help other people who might feel that they're in the same position as you to see, wow, shit, no, I can take a stab at something and do something.
Yeah, so that's a great question, because a lot of people say that to me, not just like personally or professionally. They'll kind of say you come across as really confident. And I think a lot of times people will see me doing presentations to 1,800 people. Like we had a webinar with, around 1,800 people on it. I've presented live to 400 people, and people will be like, God, you're so confident and you're this and you're that. And I'm really not. The whole time I'm bricking it. But I think the really good thing about entrepreneurs is you'll find that actually a lot of them are quite insecure and they're not as confident as they come across. But I think when you're very passionate about something, and also that fear will drive you. So a lot of people that have done really brave things, they'll say at the end, like, I was really afraid, like I didn't know what I was doing, but I just knew I had to keep going. And that's kind of what it's like being an entrepreneur.
I've found that because I'm self-employed as well, that sometimes having, you mentioned 1,400 people, I'd be nervous as well speaking in front of a group of people. But then after having done it, you feel in a better place, and you know that, okay, next time I do it, I can still feel nervous, but I know what the other side of this feeling feels like. So the nerves are still there. I'm still breaking it. I still probably over prepare, but at least now I know what the other side feels like. So it's always push yourself through it so that you know what it feels like. It's like the driving test. My first one, I kind of just went in with the attitude going, I'm just going to do this so I can say I've got the experience of having done it. I don't even think I was thinking of even trying to pass it. I just wanted to do it so the hours were there. And they say a lot of elite athletes, like any MMA fighters, they say cage time, fight time counts massively. Because the more time you're out of the ring, the less time you have in it, the less experience you have, the less of that feeling you're able to absorb. Fighting in front of a crowd and outside of a crowd is completely different. So thanks for sharing that. One thing I want to ask you is, you've got all these awards, you're building a really cool business. How do you build brand awareness or awareness of the business?
Yeah. And before I actually answer that question, I do want to say something, because I love sport as well.
Sure.
And one thing that's really interesting was that, Michael Phelps, he won like a lot of gold medals.
Yes.
At like every Olympics, like in the last like 4 years, and he retired. But I remember he was doing an interview and he said that he literally trained every single day for a year, including Christmas, every holiday, in order to prepare for the Olympics. And he said that, yeah, people always say that he's talented, but actually it comes down to hard work. So that's like really interesting, because, sometimes you look at people and you're like, they're so talented. Like Michael Phelps, he's like, what, 6'7" or something like that. Like he was built to swim, but actually he still has to train. He actually trained even harder than other people that didn't win gold medals. So yeah, it's really like, I really believe in hard work. And then to answer sorry.
No, I was just going to say, and if he skips a day, he'll probably, that fear will probably creep in. I don't know if the talk you're referencing is the one where Tony Robbins invited him to his house, but there's a talk that Tony Robbins did. It's on Tony Robbins' YouTube channel with Michael Phelps. It's about 2.5 hours long. I'll leave a link to it below if anybody wants to watch it, but well worth checking out.
Yeah, I think it actually was that. I think it was that. Tony Robbins is great too. So yeah, brand awareness. So I'm actually in this now because with COVID, everything kind of slowed down. Like preschools closed. I mean, we know a lot of businesses closed, right? So now we're really getting back to that brand awareness. And we're looking at it from multiple viewpoints. So really what we want is we want to build brand awareness, not just by, a lot of businesses will just sell. So just like buy, take a demo, call us. And I think for us, especially with like our training platform, Cloud Academy, we started the Cloud Academy initiative to enable preschool teachers to have, and parents to have access to quality training. So we have everything on guiding children's behavior, all the way to inclusion, diversity, and equality within preschool services. And that all builds brand awareness, but really we just want to bring as much value as possible. So we'll do things like that webinar that I talked about, where we had 1,800 people register and 1,400 people showed up, and that was on COVID-19 and actually reopening within the midst of COVID-19. We did another webinar on, it was called Be the Buffer, and it was about trauma. We had about 500, we actually had to cap it. So we had about 500 people on that webinar. And it's just, we build brand awareness by kind of not building brand awareness, by really just focusing on bringing value to prospective customers, because then when they look and they're like, wow, TeachCloud did that webinar, they gave me that that free ebook, they really start to trust you, and specifically looking at the content, that it's actually quality content. So a lot of times we're getting experts on here. So for example, that teacher that I talked about, Dr. Judith Butler, she was our expert on trauma because that's literally her area. For that webinar, we got a lawyer, and this was all free to the preschool services. Like, they were able to join and get that information. So for me, brand awareness equals value.
This is fascinating. From someone who said that they had a tough time in primary and secondary school and who didn't necessarily do great in their leaving cert, you've achieved a lot since then. 1,800 people registered for a webinar is a really cool achievement. You've touched on experts, Tony Robbins. Who do you learn from? Are there books you read, podcasts you listen to, people that are in your inner circle that you go to for advice?
Yeah, so for me, like, there is a book, The Daily Stoic. I'm kind of obsessed with that, and I'm also obsessed with the Bible because I'm a Christian. So both of those books, in my opinion, are kind of not the same thing, but like, they have a lot of the same kind of like philosophies. So the Daily Stoic will basically just be like, and the Bible is the same, like, it's like things you can't control, like, why are you worrying about it? Do you know what I mean? The birds have food to eat every day, so like, why are you worrying about, you know, what's going to happen tomorrow? Like, live in the present moment and do your best today, and then focus on tomorrow when it comes. And I can be quite anxious, especially running a business, and having that mindset being like, again, the Daily Stoic will say, like, amor fati, which is like, basically nothing is worse than death. So like, if you're not dying, then like, relax, because you'll wake up tomorrow and actually be a new day, and you'll get an email or you get a phone call that will change your whole day, or you'll meet someone you know, that will just make you smile, right? So those two books, the Bible and the Daily Stoic. And then somebody that which is like a bit far removed from like the Bible is Gary Vee, because he swears a lot. But if you're into that kind of stuff, Gary Vee is really good, because some people are like, don't like him or whatever. I think he might be kind of like Marmite, but for me, he's just really honest, and he just like, if you're an entrepreneur, go do it. Like, go start the business, go talk to those customers. And that's kind of my mindset. I don't like talking about things, which actually can be a detriment, because sometimes I don't plan, I just do. But then some people plan too much, you know, they're just sit at their desk and they never go out and talk to customers. So you need to have like a balance, and Gary Vee is really great at creating that balance.
Yeah, he's. I'm a fan of Gary Vee. Two final questions. I'd like you to imagine that we're now talking as if it's the year 2030, and you're looking back on the last decade, pretending that now is 2030, and you're looking back. What would you like to be looking back on from the last 10 years?
To be honest, it would be less to do with my professional career and more to be, did I actually grow personally? So what have I learned in my journey in life? Who have I helped? Have I been able to make an impact? And I think obviously that goes into your professional development, because if you're making an impact in general, usually that's going to feed into your personal and your professional life. But I want to be able to look back and be like, who did I help? Who did I make an impact on? You know, like, what did I actually achieve? I don't want every day to be the same, or just to be doing the same thing every day. I really want to make an impact. And the 10 years thing is, you know, or 2030 is really actually also what I'm looking towards. But then at the same time, I want to be able to remember not each day, but I want to have like lived in the present moment, because I can be like always looking towards the future. So I want to actually be able to be like, I did that, I did this, and actually have enjoyed the experience, rather than just, like you said, just being like super nervous and like over prepared and like, you know, like just super anxious. I want to actually be able to look back on things and smile and be like, wow, that was actually a great experience that I enjoyed.
Nice answer. Final question. All your loved ones, whoever you live with, they're all safe, but your house is burning down and you can only save one item. What one item is that going to be?
One item? Oh, definitely be my laptop. Oh my God, for sure. Or like my phone or something, like either a laptop or a phone, whichever one is closest.
Okay, cool. Well, look, Wendy, I've had a great pleasure getting to know you a little more over the last 30 minutes. I wish you nothing but the best going forward. I think what you're doing is amazing. But for me, thank you for being my guest today.
Thank you, Rian. And can I just say, your questions were super insightful, and I love taking part in this. So thank you for having me.